Hi, everyone. I wanted to talk to you about a subset of remedies that are very effective for treating people who have PANDAS or PANS. And this is inspired by a question we had in the Facebook group. So what I'm talking to you about today are pathogenic nosodes. So these are remedies that are made from and made for specific pathogens such as bacteria, viruses, parasites, and yeasts. And for the people with PANDAS and PANS, they almost always need specific pathogen nosodes to target pathogens that they currently have or had in the past in order to resolve the case and move the case toward full resolution. There are some homeopaths out there who treat these conditions and don't use nosodes, and it is my understanding that there can be less full resolution because some of these infections left such a strong imprint on the person's constitution that they really need to clear it in order to clear the condition of PANDAS or PANS. And so I'm going to read some of the features that we see that indicate that certain pathogen nosodes are needed. So for example, the strep nosode. I'm going to read the mental and emotional and behavioral features. And by the way, I am reading this from a book that I got from Angelica Lemke, naturopathic doctor, Book of Life. Now, this is available to practitioners, but she does have a book that's very similar that is available to the general public, and that is called Healing Complex Children with Homeopathy. I actually just got this in the mail a few days ago. I haven't read it myself, but I know that a lot of her information was derived from this book. So that is a book that I highly recommend if you're going down the path of using homeopathy for PANDAS or PANS. All right, so if the strep nosode is needed, these are some of the mental and emotional features we will probably see. And this is kind of a long list, so hang in there. There may be sudden onset symptoms, obsessive compulsive disorder, lining up of toys or other items, meltdowns and defiance, angry if they don't get it right or they don't get their way, bedtime rituals or bedtime fears, a lot of separation anxiety, poor handwriting, difficulty with math, unusual fears or delusions, phobia of germs, possible auditory hallucinations, self-talk, baby talk, verbal stimming. By the way, you don't have to have every one of these symptoms in order for this remedy, this nosode to be useful for your case. Just want to put that out there. Age regression, ritualistic rituals that the child will throw a tantrum if they are not allowed to perform their full ritual. Crying out at night with nightmares, poor self-esteem, may dislike attention or consolation, social anxiety, wanting to fit in, suppressed grief in the family. And I'm not going to do the physicals because it's the things that we all know. So a lot of what I just listed, it sounds like I was listing the symptoms of PANDAS, doesn't it? And that is because so many of these cases do have a history of strep. Okay. And so that's why this nosode is very useful and very commonly given in a case of PANDAS or PANS. Now, and there are a lot of different bacteria nosodes that, staph. There are a ton of different strep strains, nosodes, that I'm not going to list, but there's mycoplasma, All right, now I'm going to skip over to yeast, specifically Candida, since that's the most commonly prescribed nosode. Now, this would be useful in a case, especially where there was a lot of antibiotic use or suppressed immunity, where yeast is more common in the case. The mental and emotional features would be giggling and silliness as if they're drunk, hard to please, fogginess or brain fog, unhappy, whining, dissatisfied, suppressed anger. They feel like their boundaries have been violated, a sense of overwhelm, chaos. They act like a bull in a china shop, an angry, evil laugh. That sort of goes along with the drunken behavior, I think. Can be unusually silly or happy in a drunk way. History of long-term antibiotic use. Now, some of the physical symptoms might be night waking, bedwetting, white tongue, itchy anal area, maybe a rash back there, teeth grinding, uh, cradle cap, that kind of thing. All right. Now, what I find is that oftentimes when a strep nosode is given, a candida nosode will be needed soon. They can sort of alternate the two. So a lot of times in a case where there's a lot of strep in the history, a lot of antibiotics have been used, so there's yeast as well. So you've got strep and yeast in the history. You give a strep nosode and the strep the symptoms kind of come down and the yeast symptoms will come up. So sometimes it requires both of those nosodes to be used simultaneously or alternating, something like that. Parasites. So I'm going to read the general mental and emotional symptoms listed in this book for parasites in general. Biting people, randomly hitting people, worse during the new moon or full moon, irritable, sound sensitive, loud crying and whining, paranoia, pulling at threads, pulling at strings, scratching other people, obsessed with water, feels like life is being sucked out of you, mixing up your words, feeling blocked or stuck. And then you may or may not know, I think a lot of people know the physical symptoms of parasites would be teeth grinding, chewing on things, a peeling lower lip, possible loss of vision, seizures. Those are a little bit more extreme. We don't see those a lot. Sensory sensitivity, sensitive to light and sound, hives, allergies, bloody nose, cracked lips, open sores on scalp, dilated pupils, itchy bottom. There may be issues with the stool or constipation. All right. Let's move on to, and there are a lot of parasite remedies, including the, Lyme, Borrelia, Bartonella, Babesia. Moving on to viruses. A lot of PANS cases end up needing to clear a virus as well. And I'm going to read the mental and emotional symptoms of viruses in general. So there may be some ADHD, such as unable to stick to one activity for long, angry when other people are chewing, anxiety about germs, bouncing from one thought to another, can be boisterous, fearless, reckless behavior, intrusive thoughts, such as to lick something, lining up things, so that would be like OCD, neurotic, fast talking, playing with water, repetitive thoughts, or monomania. So monomania is when they're fixated on one topic or one thing. Overanalyzing, scripting movies, watching YouTube over and over. Obsessive interests, well, that was monomania, same thing. Stuck on, okay, vocal stimming, or sort of iPad stimming, sort of like stuck on the iPad doing the same thing. And the overall feeling with viruses is that there's just been too much in the person's schedule. They're worn down. They're susceptible to viruses. They're going, going, going. They might be a little type A, maybe. Or their family is forcing them to be type A. They want to slow down. Their body needs to slow down. So those are some of the symptoms of viruses. So I wanted to bring this up because, a lot of PANS symptoms or PANS cases come to us needing to clear many different things, many different viruses, yeast, parasite, bacteria, and these can come up in layers. Not all of them need to be cleared at once. Oftentimes it's like a bacteria, maybe strep, that has to go first. Again, I highly recommend if you hire a homeopath to also get this book, because once you get this book, you can eventually take over some of the management of your child's case on your own. It'll make you feel much more empowered instead of having to call a homeopath every time something shifts or every time there's a little bit of a flare that comes up. Over time, the flares do decrease. They get lesser in frequency and intensity over time. And then if you're lucky, if the person is lucky, the case can resolve fully. When I say lucky, what I mean is in order for a PANDAS or PANS case to fully resolve, I believe that they also need to be watching their lifestyle. So exercise, diet, especially diet, can be pretty important as far as not having the susceptibility to have another PANS or PANDAS exacerbation. Supplements, maintaining stress. So just lifestyle habits, a clean lifestyle. In my case, I'll just throw this out there with my two kids. I would consider them cured. People always ask if there is a cure. They had to clear many of these pathogens over time. Every once in a while, I have to bring something back. It's usually for physical, like my son was just sick. He had a really bad cough that other remedies weren't really completely clearing, but it was the strep pneumonia nosode that finally like brought that cough to a more manageable level for him, and it brought down his fever. So, to this day, I will still use nosodes only if the other remedies aren't working. But I would say like one of my sons, I would say is sort of more cured than the other because he's very in tune with his lifestyle, making sure he gets enough sleep. He doesn't eat foods he's not supposed to eat. Whereas I have another son who does eat a lot of food he should not eat. He goes and goes and goes until he crashes. And that can sort of set him up to a susceptibility of something that I don't believe it would be clinically considered PANS, but to mom's eye and to me being a practitioner, to my eye, I'm like, he could be doing a little bit better mentally and emotionally. And it's because of the way he's living his life. And, he's an average teenager. And so in order for a person to be cured of PANDAS, they do have to watch their lifestyle. You can't live just a reckless lifestyle and think that you're always going to be well mentally and emotionally. But I would say the reason I would say my kids are basically cured is because they can get a strep infection, they can get a staph infection, they can get, I don't know, influenza and not have any PANDAS symptoms at all. So that means that their immune system has been trained by these remedies and just a good lifestyle to respond to a pathogen in a normal way, which would be a fever and a sore throat and achiness rather than getting obsessed and having tics and things like that. All right, I hope you gained something from that, and I will pop in here again soon.